Russia attacked Lviv with an Oreshnik missile on the night of January 8th to 9th, thereby sending a signal, as strange as it may sound, to the Americans. Why am I saying this? Because the day before, the State Duma of the Russian Federation directly stated that this was in response to the seizure of Shadow Fleet tankers near Venezuela by the American Coast Guard. Russia should strike with Oreshnik missiles, for example, at Europe, in order to send a signal that supposedly they can't be treated this way. But, of course, they didn't have the guts to hit Europe, so the Russians launched an Oreshnik at Lviv instead. Moreover, the day before, the United States Embassy in Kiev warned that in the coming days a ballistic attack on Ukraine was indeed possible and that it could be a massive missile attack. And so, around 11 o'clock post-meridian Kiev time, an air raid alert was announced across all of Ukraine, and by midnight a series of explosions occurred in Lviv. Well, the videos that appeared online show a characteristic attack by the Oreshnik missile because the Oreshnik missile has several warheads that separate as it approaches the target trajectory and attack the target individually. Additionally, in favor of it being the Oreshnik, there is information that in Lviv a quick laboratory test was conducted to check the radiation level in the air, and it was determined that even if it was the Oreshnik, it definitely did not have a nuclear warhead, so accordingly there was no nuclear strike. But even the Oreshnik with so-called dummy warheads also causes quite significant damage. My name is Alexei Pechi. Let's discuss together the information that is known at the moment. It's already about 2 o'clock in the morning Kiev time, so I'll gather the most up-to-date information at the moment. What happened? Why was the strike specifically on Lviv? And why did Russia even launch this attack? What was it trying to say with all of this? Before we start this episode, I ask you to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and leave a comment under this episode. This really helps the YouTube algorithms show this video to as many viewers as possible. I would appreciate it, and also subscribe to my Telegram channel. The link is in the description of this video. There we post breaking news as soon as it comes in. So, I'll start with the main information. In Lviv, during the night of January 8th to 9th, there was a series of loud explosions. People online immediately wrote about a strike with a drone, but this information was not officially confirmed for a long time. After 11 o'clock post-meridian, an air raid alert was declared across Ukraine due to the threat of ballistic missiles. In addition, the enemy launched drones and explosions were heard in Kiev and some other regions. Moreover, unfortunately, videos appeared online showing how these Shaheeds deliberately attack residential buildings. However, there were no reports of an air threat directly for Lviv, but around midnight, a series of loud explosions in Lviv was reported online. The mayor, Andrei Sadovoy, and then the regional state administration head, Maxim Kozitsky, later confirmed this information. And now you can listen to what the residents of Lviv heard during the attack on the city.
Yo.
The question is, why did they start talking about the hazel tree? Because right after the air raid alert was announced, monitoring channels started reporting a threat specifically from the hazel tree. And in addition to that, the day before, the United States Embassy had warned that Russia might launch a new massive strike on Ukraine in the next few days. As stated in the message from the United States Embassy, quote, "The United States Embassy in Kiev received information about a potentially significant air attack that could occur at any time in the next few days." In addition, the diplomatic agency's message recommends identifying shelter locations in advance before an air raid alert is announced, downloading a reliable air raid alert app to your mobile phone, and immediately taking cover when an alert is issued. Monitor local media for urgent news. Be prepared to adjust your plans, have supplies of water, food and medicine, and in case of emergency, follow the instructions of Ukrainian officials and emergency services. Moreover, the previous evening, President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine also warned that there could be a truly serious, massive missile attack that night. Therefore, Zelensky urged that it is very important to respond to air raid alerts and to make sure to go to a shelter. I would like to note that Russia has already launched the Oreshnik against Ukraine, and that was in November 2024. At that time, the city of Dnipro was targeted. It is known that the missile was launched from the Kapustin Yar testing range in the Astrakhan region, where the rocket system 26 Rubesh systems are based. These systems are designed for nuclear strikes at distances of up to 6,000 kilometers. It is also known that on that night the missile flew 1,500 kilometers along Lviv in about 15 minutes. Was it really Oreshnik? Judging by the videos that appeared online, I think there's nothing to argue about. Nevertheless, on January 8th, around 11:30 post-meridium, the Air Force declared a missile threat across the entire territory of Ukraine precisely because of the threat of ballistic missiles being launched from the Kapustin Yar range. And the Air Force simply noted that explosions were recorded. In the Lviv region, the information is being clarified. At the same time, Sadovoy noted that in the first minutes it was not known whether it was an Oryk or not. Kozitsky also reported that at the site of the missile attack in Lviv, the radiation levels are within normal limits and no harmful substances were found in the air. Nevertheless, it is also very important to note that based on the videos that appeared online, it can be understood that it really was an Oryk. And apparently the target was one of the gas storage facilities, a very specific choice of target. But, as many experts are saying now, essentially this was the Russians trying to send a signal to the Americans, like this is what could happen if you start seizing our tankers. I'll explain a bit later what is meant by the gas storage facility. Well, most likely it was chosen as a target for the attack to cause maximum damage and unfortunately to create such a terrible scene. And here I'll remind you that the Oreshnik missile at the moment of descent, meaning right when it's about to strike the target, splits into several warheads. Such weapons are designed to deliver a special warhead, specifically a nuclear one, which of course was not used in this situation. So if it really was an Oreshnik missile, then it was the descent of several mass-dimensional mock-ups, that is, so-called dummies made of iron and concrete. Well, it's loud, relatively speaking, unsafe, but not critical. So, as you understand, it's still not a full-fledged Oreshnik. So here I want to give you a quote from Nikolevsky Vanka, because he probably wrote about this in a pretty characteristic way. He writes that the Oreshnik without a warhead, just like the previous one in the Dnipro without a warhead, this thing can also cause trouble. It's good that there's no information about casualties or deaths, but keep in mind that we don't have protection against this missile while the United States does. They do. This year or next year, it's more needed. There's no sarcasm or irony here, end of quote. So what does that mean? It means that this really could have been a demonstration strike to show off Russian capabilities to the United States of America. Because Donald Trump, for example, today requested from Congress for the next fiscal year, which will start in October 2026, $1.5 trillion for the military budget. This is simply a record amount which even surpasses the previous records that the Americans had before. I have a separate episode on this topic coming out today on this YouTube channel, so make sure to subscribe. On the other hand, today the Russians tried at least to guess or threaten the Americans in response to them seizing their Shadow Fleet tanker in the Atlantic Ocean, which was coming from Venezuela. Alexei Zhuravlyov is a person. He is one of the deputies of the State Duma of the Russian Federation, who today stated that it is necessary to demonstratively sink a couple of United States Coast Guard ships and to strike Oreshnik somewhere in Europe with a missile, and in this way demonstrate to the Americans that supposedly we are determined. But obviously they can't even strike Europe with a conventional missile because they're afraid, because that would be an attack on NATO. So they decided to strike as close as possible to the NATO border, that is at Lviv, with that same Oreshnik hinting that they could supposedly strike even further. So perhaps this really was a kind of show of force to scare the Americans, to scare the Europeans, like, look, this is how it all could end. But at the end of this episode, I want to note that at the same time a blackout occurred in Russian Belgorod. The day before, local social media reported a drone attack on this city, and the Russian city of Oriel was partially without power. Some unknown drones also visited there, but at the same time, Russia continues to attack Ukraine. On the night of January 8th to 9th, there were reports of missile launches, and in addition, drones were flying over Kyiv. Unfortunately, today we can see such scenes in Kiev, when drones are clearly targeting residential buildings specifically. So friends, please take care of yourselves and pay attention to air raid sirens, and don't ignore this important safety advice.
Now we'll record the subtitles. Subtitles created by Dimatorzuk.
Yes, our house got hit. That's right. Yeah.
Subtitles. Bye. I'll put an ellipsis here, friends. Write your comments, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care. Bye, everyone.